Welcome to this session on how to stop being the stop and drop mom. I'm going to talk to you about how to create boundaries for yourself, for your time, and for your goals so that you can work on your dreams without feeling resentful towards your family and the other people who are pulling your attention. Because as a busy mom, that's what it's like. We are going to talk about how to make boundaries that work for you and your family. And I want to be really clear about this. The boundaries that we talk about today, they're individual. They are based on your family and your needs. I talk a lot about balance versus alignment. And balance is kind of saying everything is always getting the same amount of attention. I think that's a myth. I think as moms, we need to instead look at things called alignment. How are things connected and aligned for us during the season that we're in? So the boundaries that you create during one season may not be the boundaries that you create during every single season. And the ones that I want for my life may not be the ones that you need for yours. So take that into consideration as we kind of go into this session. I'm Cara, by the way, if we've never met. I'm the founder of A Purpose-Driven Mom, where I help moms find time for their goals, their personal life, and their families without burning out or feeling like they have to hustle all the time. I'm a mom of three, which is such an old picture, but I love it so much. My kids are currently 7, 9, and 18. My oldest just turned 18 a few weeks ago. And I'm a former burnt out school teacher turned kind of accidental entrepreneur. I started my business because I was terrible at boundaries. I was hitting burnout in my business and in my job as a teacher. I was doing network marketing on the side. I was attached to my laptop 24/7. And I'm going to tell you a bunch of those stories as we go through today. And I just thought there had to be something else. It wasn't until I really sat down and created some boundaries for myself, I really made a change in the way that I looked at things, that my business started to feel better, my personal life started to feel better, and I started to become more confident in the person I am and in the, people I let into my circle. And I'm going to share that with you today. I'm also the host of the Purpose-Driven Mom podcast and the author of the book, The 15-Minute Formula, How Busy Moms Can Ditch the Guilt, Say Yes to What Matters, and Conquer Their Goals. And I've been able to grow this business while my kids are home, at school, part-time, full-time, the whole nine over the past 7 years. I've been able to do that because I've created boundaries for myself, for my family, for my job, and for my business. And those things have helped me. I'm going to share them today with you. All right, so let's talk about this phrase, stop and drop mom. Maybe this sounds like you. The stop and drop mom came up for me when my oldest, again, he's a senior in high school now, was in about 6th grade, and he had a presentation to do, and it was the thing, and maybe you've heard it before, Mom, I need the poster board for the presentation, right? It was late at night, and I was so tired. I was frustrated. I had asked him repeatedly, what do you have for homework this week? We've been checking things, and then all of a sudden, now a presentation is due, and he needed materials. Again, does this sound familiar to you? And I said, enough is enough. I'd given you ample opportunity to get your things, and we needed to have a natural consequence, which was your presentation was going to be late. And I realized it wasn't his fault so much that this situation had occurred. I had created this situation because I was a stop and drop mom. I had shown my family that they can come to me last minute. I wasn't going to respect my own boundaries. I will drop whatever I'm doing to help you out. Now, those things aren't inherently all bad, but when you do them over and over and over, and you're just, helping other people so much at the detriment of yourself, it's what leads to burnout. And it's what has created a more stop and drop mom mentality. This has been the story of our life for multiple occasions. I remember a time where it happened with my husband, right? He needed something, lotion or deodorant. I couldn't remember exactly what it was. And I used to say, okay, I can go do it. Now, I've been a work-at-home mom for 7 years. I was a school teacher before this. I was a school teacher for about 9 years. I've been out of the classroom for a decade. I've had my business 7 years. So I was a work-at-home mom for a long time. But I, in my brain, kept thinking, well, I'm home, so I must do everything for my family, everything that my home needs, and avoid my work because my home needed to come first. Now, that thought did not serve me because what it was doing was having me put my goals and my dreams aside so that I could do things for other people. So again, if my husband texted me in the morning and was like, hey, I need this thing today, I would stop the plan that I had carefully curated, and go to the store and get what they needed, pushing off the own tasks that I put on my list. This is not serving you. There is a way to serve your family. There is a way to show up for your family. There is a way to show up as the mom that is aligned for you without putting yourself last. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want you to ask yourself, does your life feel like it's running you? Do you feel like this mom here on the slide who's just all over the place trying to figure out how to get it done? Really do a gut check with yourself. Do you get to the end of the night, throw your hands in the air, and wonder what even happened? Because if that is you, if you're like, yep, that's me, I want you to lean in. Because I do think that this presentation is going to give you some practical tips and tools to gain more control. It's not about not doing anything for anyone ever. And I want to be clear about that, right? Because people are like, your kids are too independent, you make them do too much, right? And maybe you've heard that. It's not about that. It's that I deserve to have a life where I feel more in control of my time and my space and my energy. And one of the ways to do that is to create some boundaries. Because if not, you're going to be led into a place of burnout. Now, I have hit a very hard place of burnout twice in my life. And we'll talk about what burnout is, but I'm going to tell you. When you hit that space where enough is enough, your body is going to tell you, your brain is going to tell you, the feelings that you have is going to tell you. I remember when I was a teacher, and this was what caused me to leave teaching. I was the principal of our summer school program. I was on track to be an administrator. And the last day of summer school overlapped with the first day of regular school for teachers. I worked at a high performance charter school, 12 months, school was all the time. And I asked my principal what I was supposed to do. Because I was like, well, I'm supposed to be here, but I'm supposed to be here. And he just said to me, you'll figure it out. And I sat in my car that day and I cried. And I went home to my husband and I said, I cannot do this anymore. I have been living my entire life up until this point in my professional career for everybody else. And I'm burnt out and I'm exhausted and I want to spend time with my family, not sit in my car and cry because I'm supposed to just magically bend time. When you hit this place of burnout, it is very hard to come back from it. And so one of my goals is to help moms figure out how to manage their time in a way that doesn't feel burnt out so that they can not hit this point, right? You can stop it before the resentment becomes so much that you do the thing where you just blow up on everybody because you're overstimulated and you don't know what to do and where to go. So what is burnout? That's that chronic exhaustion, the physical, emotional, those feelings of detachment, hopelessness, right? You just can't do it anymore. And I know that so many of us moms feel this way because we are running on empty. We are going all cylinders. Let's go. Let's do everything for everyone else. And this is more than tired. This is that deep-seated sense of overwhelmment. This is that thing that's like, I cannot do one more thing. And maybe you've been there. Maybe you've been on the edge of it. And if that is you, I just want to tell you that it can be different. And I hope that the tips you get from us in this short time together can help you get there. All right. I want you to do a gut check. You can journal, you can write this down, pause if you need. Where do you often feel the most drained or resentful? This is important. I think a lot of times we just want to fix things. And I teach a lot of moms in my membership, and we talk about auditing your goals and figuring out why things aren't working. Until you can figure out where something actually is broken, where it's not working, you can't fix it. It's very easy to just throw our hands up and be like, well, nothing is working. I can't do anything. I hear you. But why don't we ask ourselves where? Because I found for myself, there are areas of my life where I do feel like I'm on the edge of burnout. Then there are areas of my life where I don't. But we want to catastrophize. Our brain wants to say, everything is awful, right? Everything is not working. Nothing is good. I can't do anything right. I want you to really reflect. Where do you often feel drained or resentful? Is it at the end of the day? Is it at work? Is it when it's the middle of the night and you have to do the million feeds? Is it when your kids need help with their homework? Is it around your house, right? For me, that big one is like the cleaning. And I'll give you some cleaning examples when we get to the boundaries section here. I feel so drained when I have to get my house together. I feel resentful. I do the thing where I stomp around my house and I'm like, nobody cleans up around here, right? I noticed, right? I want you to notice that was making me feel resentful towards my family. And when you can pinpoint and notice where you feel like your boundaries are being pulled and where you're on the edge of burnout, then we can make a plan around that area. So pick an area of your life, again, work, family, personal, whatever it is, and keep it in the back of your mind. Now, I want you to ask yourself this question. What habits or behaviors are you engaging in right now that might be contributing to your burnout? What are you doing? A lot of times we want to put the onus on other people. Well, if everyone else helped me out more, if my kids did their homework without arguing, if my kids weren't fighting anymore, if my husband did the dishes, if this person at work would stop putting stuff on my plate. There's a phrase I like to remind myself when people break my boundaries, and that is that we teach people how to treat us. So you have to have some ownership over your own behaviors. What are the habits or the behaviors that you might potentially be participating in? Like, where is your onus? We're not going to be victims here. We're going to be action takers. What could be contributing to your burnout? So I shared this example of like the household chores. I was feeling super resentful towards all the stuff around my house. And when I asked myself, well, what could I potentially be doing that's contributing to this? I realized a few things. I was refusing actually any help. I would complain about nobody helping me. I would want things done a certain way. But if it wasn't done particular, if it wasn't done on my own timeline, and again, pot, kettle black, like let's be real here. I say I want the trash taken out. I mean, I want it taken out right now. I don't want it taken out after the football game. Like, let's be real. That behavior is not healthy and it's not helpful. I was saying, yes, I want help. The house and the home management, it's getting under my skin. I'm working, I'm exhausted. I'm starting to feel like I have to do everything for everyone all the time, but I wasn't allowing other people to help me. And when they did help, I criticized. When they did help, I would point out how they weren't doing it the way they wanted. Or, oh, well, I'm happy you can finally help. And it wasn't until I started to recognize my onus in this that I was able to make a plan. So be real with yourself right now. Where are you becoming that stop and drop mom? Where are you contributing to your own burnout? If you are saying, again, let's go to this deodorant example. My husband says he needs deodorant, and I say, great, I'm gonna go get it right now. That is a behavior that is contributing to broken boundaries. If I say to my husband, I run errands on Wednesdays, and I will go on Wednesday. If you need it beforehand, you can go and get it. And I don't stick to that, and I just go because he asks right away, that is going to teach him that I don't actually respect my own boundaries. Now, caveat, I run errands on Wednesdays. Cool. Sometimes I just feel like going to the store on a Monday. It's okay, right? I don't have to be so strict and only go to the store on Wednesdays. But when you have these repeated behaviors over and over, you're teaching people, oh, Cara will just do whatever you need. All right, Cara will just drop her own thing for me. And it becomes a learned behavior. So again, we're not placing blame anywhere, but I want you to just ask yourself, where am I potentially contributing to these feelings of resentfulness and burnout? Now, lack of boundaries is our big topic of today, and it is what connects to burnout. Now, we talked about just the blur, right? When your boundaries between work, your personal life blur, it's hard to switch off, and then you're stressed all the time. So I'm going to give an example of my husband. He was a school principal. He would be at school all day long. He would leave. He had an hour commute home. On the commute, parents are calling him, board members, like all types of stuff was happening. He would come in the house. He would go right to the office. He'd answer a couple calls. He'd come out. He'd eat dinner. And he would normally just fall asleep on the couch because he was so exhausted. And we had to have that conversation that your family needs you. Like we would like part of you, and we're getting kind of the fumes. Is there a way that potentially like you can create some more boundaries that when you come home, you're home? And he was like, you know what, you're right. I don't need to answer every single call. I don't need the emails to be answered all the time. Now, his job was high demand. Parents expected him to call them right away. But again, I learned this when I was a teacher too. You teach people how to treat you. Now, we did this at work. In my business, we have an away message that goes up when emails come in because there's a real person. It's not an AI. It's a real person sitting there that has work hours and answers our emails. We didn't have this before. And one of the things that was happening was people were getting frustrated, irate. They were mad that we weren't answering their emails right away. And it wasn't until we created this away message that it was like, hey, we see it. Your email's here. We'll get back to you within 24 hours, right? It's a respectful policy. And it allowed us to feel like we didn't have to be glued to the computer. Overcommitting is another way that you are potentially getting yourself on that downhill slope of this is going to lead to burnout. When you know what is aligned for you in your life, it is very easy to say no to things. When you don't, then you have the chance that you will say yes over and over and over, and then things become unmanageable. Now, this is somewhere I still struggle. I very much love service. I love to volunteer. I give back. And I often will say yes to too many commitments. But when I become overcommitted to things, I'm starting to feel stressed out. I start to want to micromanage other things, and I get annoyed that things aren't going the way that I want, when in the end I could have said no to something and it would have been fine. And this kind of connects into the people pleasing, right? Is this you? The fear of disappointing other people can often stretch you too thin, right? You neglect your own needs. Oh, I was going to go for a walk. Well, you know what? I'm going to help with homework here instead. Well, I was going to go out for a girls' night. Well, I think that you need me home so you can go out with your friends. And I think when you have this people-pleasing mentality, it can be really hard to say no, which then lends to burnout. And to close that out, self-care is so key. When your boundaries are weak, the first thing that you're going to toss off your list is the thing you said you wanted to do for you. And then the burnout feels harder and worse, and the crash is even deeper. Do you have self-boundaries? All right, let's talk a little bit about this, because yes, we'll talk about boundaries with your family. We're going to get to that. But you need to have boundaries with yourself. These are the limits that you set to protect your time, your energy, and your well-being. They're your own personal rules that you establish to ensure you stay aligned with your values and your priorities. These are the things that you have determined matter to you. Now, these are very hard to keep, but I know for myself, for example, exercise. If I don't get movement in at least 4 days a week, I feel sluggish. I don't feel my best. I just feel like I can't conquer things like I need to. So I have made a self boundary for myself that if I take 2 days, more than 2 days off of movement, I need to get going, right? That day 3, like I have to get going. I don't allow myself to take more than 2 days off, even if it's a light stretch or a walk. It doesn't have to be the most intense exercise. I have made a boundary for myself that says I'm not going to take 2 days off of movement because my body deserves it, and that's the energy I need. Have you ever done this? Have you made personal rules or boundaries with yourself? Okay. These self-boundaries also allow you to stop self-sabotaging. This was something I did with the volunteering. I love to volunteer, like I shared, and I needed to make some commitments going into this school year that didn't leave me burnt out, that didn't overextend. And so I actually talked it through with my therapist, and we came up with a couple things that worked for me. I can volunteer for things, but I only would like to volunteer for things that are short term. So an example of this is I used to be a cheerleading coach, and I coached all year round, and it was a lot. It was a lot of work on my end. I don't want to do that anymore. And my daughter still competitively cheers. So when it came time to volunteer for things with cheer, there were 5 different options that you could volunteer. I want to volunteer. That's aligned with my personal priorities. But I asked myself, what can I do that won't overextend me? Because I'm a Girl Scout leader too, so I do that all year round. And I looked at the list, okay? So there was like team mom, which means I'd have to be at every practice. No, that breaks my self-boundary of doing something that's constant. Okay, cool, I don't want to do that. The booster club. Okay, that could sort of work, but booster club does do things all year round. I don't think that's what I want to do. The service committee. Ding, ding, ding. We had a winner here. This was a new committee that I actually helped start so that the cheer gym could give back to the community. We run 2 service projects a year. It's short-termed, right? So like, for example, while I'm recording this, we're getting ready to fill food bags for the homeless shelter. We went and organized clothing. We do clothing drives. It's short-term. It's not constant. It's not all the time, but it allows me to still volunteer, help, and give back without feeling like I can't do it anymore. That was a boundary I had to make in advance. So when you're making yourself boundaries, I really recommend you make them when you're in a healthy state of mind, when you're not feeling burnt out, when you're in a good place. Because if you're trying to make these boundaries when you're not in a good headspace, it's very easy to not want to do it, all right? But when you have strong boundaries, they're gonna enable your decision-making to feel great rather than wishy-washy. And I think part of this also comes, I always share, like I turned 40 this year, and I keep saying that turning 40 was like the best thing that happened to me because I've become so much more confident in who I am as a person that when I say no to things, it doesn't feel like icky or weird or gross. I'm just like, it's just not aligned for me. And we're gonna talk about how you can do that now, but make your own self boundaries, all right? So what are the areas that you struggle to say no or yes to yourself? Are there areas where you don't follow in through these self boundaries? These are the areas that I suggest you work on, right? And again, like I mentioned, what are the lessons that we teach others when we do not say no to them? Now, I just want a little big sister, tough love, real talk for you. You deserve to say no when something doesn't align. You do not have to say yes just because someone asks you. I get that we want to help our kids. We want to serve our family. We want to do good in our community. We want to be good people. We want to be helpful. Oh my gosh, this person needs a ride for their kid to the sport activity. I'm all for helping out, but there comes a time when people will take advantage of that, and you have to know what your line is of feeling taken advantage. If you're not settled in who you are as a person, it's very easy to have other people break your boundaries because you don't know them. You don't have them. And this year I've done a lot of work in therapy. Like I said, I turned 40. I got I'm a life coach. I got a new certification in people pleasing. And part of it was really identifying with myself what my boundaries are for things. So yes, I am 100% fine if every once in a while, like your kid needs a ride to something, my kid's going to it too. Yeah, it takes a village. Let's help out. But when it starts to become every single week over and over again, and there's no reciprocal there, that's when we have a conversation. So I just want to remind you that you deserve to say no when things do not align. And people pleasing is a type of behavior. It is not your identity. A lot of people struggle with boundaries because they're like, I'm a people pleaser. I'm a people pleaser. Okay, cool. No, you're not. You participate in people pleasing behaviors. You are not a people pleaser. That is not who you are. So because it's a habit, people pleasing is a habit. It's a behavior. Because of that, that means that you can change it. When we think that people pleasing is our identity, our brain starts to feel like now we can't change it. No, we can't fix it. That's a lie. People pleasing is just a type of behavior that you might be participating in. And if you're ready to change it, then we can talk about how to do so, right? And just this is my little friendly reminder as someone who works on people pleasing behaviors as well. You're worthy whether you help somebody or not. You're worthy whether you bend over backwards for every person. You are worthy no matter what. You can just affirm your own worthiness by showing up. You don't need to earn any of it. And when you get around people who make you feel like you have to break your own boundaries to please them, those are like the people we give our energy to, which we'll talk about now. Again, we need to help ourselves honor our own needs, our wants, and our desires. Okay, but first we have to identify them. So I want you to ask yourself, what changes do you feel like you need to make when it comes to honoring your boundaries? As I was talking, you probably thought of times where you break your own boundaries. I want you to write them down. I want you to ask yourself, where am I allowing people to quote unquote walk all over me? Where am I not creating a boundary? Is there no boundary at all? Do I even know what the boundary is? What are some of the areas that I need to decide? You know, I have my own business. I work from home. I'm fortunate. I have a door that closes. I have an office. But my kids will still sometimes come in. And we've had to communicate boundaries because I was getting so frustrated working from home. And this happened at the start of the pandemic. I was working from home. My husband worked from home. Our kids were little. It was really incredibly frustrating. And I had made a plan and I was like, okay, these are my hours to work. And then these are your hours to work. And then these are mine. And we swapped back and forth. And I was getting so annoyed because I would say, this is my hours to work. These are my time to work. But then let me just help out with the kids real quick. Let me just do this thing real quick. I wasn't allowing my husband to help out in a way that we talked about. And I realized that I was trying to control everything so much that I wasn't honoring my own boundaries. And it was very easy for him to be like, well, Cara's got it, and allow those boundaries to get broken. So what are changes you feel like you need to make? What do you want your personal boundaries to be? Now, we're going to look at these different areas: work, family, personal, fun, habits. And I'm going to give you some suggestions today on how you can create new boundaries in these areas. And I want you to ask yourself, how can I take these to be less stop and drop and more in control and proactive in my life? All right, let's start with family. I'm going to give you some really good suggestions on how I've been able to create boundaries with my family that don't leave me feeling like I'm the worst mom in the world, but instead let me to be empowered. The first one is thought catcher time. Now, this happens to me on Sundays. I make my plan for the week. I don't know about you, but I make my plan for the week. I'm like, this is when I'm going to get work done. This is when I'm going to go do laundry. This is when I'm going to do that. But the one thing I used to forget to do was create white space in my calendar for nothing except the stuff I forgot. And this was one of my favorite pieces of a family boundary. I started to create thought catcher time where I would put Wednesdays, for example. I drop my kids off at school at 9 o'clock. I would then go to Target, do a Target pickup if I had done it in advance, or go buy what I need to buy. And then I would sit in my car and I would make phone calls before I went home. And I had predetermined that that was my target time. Because I had predetermined my thought catcher time, I was able to communicate that with my family. And so this became now, when my husband did need the deodorant, I could say with like fidelity and confidence, awesome, I plan to go Wednesdays to go to the store. I can get it then. And that was hard in the beginning. People were like, I need stuff now, right? I think about my oldest. He said, I need things now. I had taught him that that was okay. By creating thought catcher time in my schedule before the week starts, there's a predictable time. I know when I'm going to go run my errands, and you can specialize. This is my errands time. This is my phone calls time, whatever. I have a home admin time. I have an errands time. I have a phone calls time. And then I also have something that has nothing. It's just called buffer. And what happens there is that all of the stuff that I forgot to put on my plan for the week gets put in that spot. This way, when stuff comes up, I don't have to move my schedule around. All I have to do is look at it and say, okay, this is when I said I was going to work on this, and I'm going to get it done. And it takes a little bit of time, right? You have to norm this. You have to get used to, I'm not going to go. I really want to stop and drop and go buy the deodorant for you now, but I'm going to wait till Wednesday because we need to retrain this behavior. You also need to have this with yourself. So I might talk about this in itself, but just while I'm thinking about it, I like to run errands because it breaks up my day a little bit. But it's so much more efficient to batch all my errands, to have a morning, like I do mine Thursdays, to have a morning where I go run all the errands, where I'm going to go get all of it done. I'm going to do all my driving around so that I'm not as distracted. Even today, before I recorded this session, I had to go run an errand that I was like, oh, this won't take me more than 15 minutes. That's a lie. We know nothing actually takes the 15 minutes that we plan. So instead of saying, I'm going to go run that errand real quick and then I'll come back, I was like, no, I'm going to record this session and I'm going to go on the time that I said I was going to go run my errands. This is hard to do, but you have to keep that with yourself. So create a time in your schedule before the week starts and say, this is when I'm going to run errands. This is when I'm going to plan nothing except for the little stuff that comes up. This is when I'm going to have white space and buffer. I also recommend you norm your family boundaries. So if you want to have family game night, we do family game night once a week. It's very important to us. We've had family meetings. We've decided it's something we want to do together. It's important for connection, especially in our busy lives. We've normed that is family game time and what it looks like, which is my husband and I, our phones are on the table. My kids don't really play with their tablets, but if they did, it would be it's a no tech time, right? What is happening during family time? Do this for things like dinner. Create family boundaries where you're saying, at dinner, we don't have our phones. Or during, movie week, once a week, everyone picks a movie and the family boundary is we all watch in the same room together. We all get to hang out together. Create boundaries in your family that get stuck to so that it teaches and trains people what the boundaries are and have your kids help you stick with them. If I am on Monopoly night and I pull my phone out, my kids will say to me, Mom, phone. I want them to call me on it because it's going to teach them how to create boundaries and it's going to help me stick with them. And then just communicating your needs. When mommy needs a break, I'm like, mommy needs a break. I just came back from a girls' weekend trip and my kids were like, Mommy, don't go. And I was like, listen, Mommy's going away with her friends for a couple days. You guys are going to be fine. I'm going to miss you too. But this is something that's really important to me and that I need to do right now. Communicate your needs, because when you don't communicate your needs, you're going to sit in this land of resentfulness and it's going to turn into you snapping at someone and then it's not going to be a good situation. Now, we talked a little about self-boundaries, but I just want to remind you that personal boundaries matter. A couple things that I suggest you do. One is, I don't always have self-care in its own bucket, but let's just talk about it because I think self-care is in everything. Do you have time for you? And I work with hundreds of moms and they're all like, I don't have any time for me. Friend, you can make 15 minutes for yourself. And it doesn't have to look grandiose. I don't have to go take a whole spa day. I don't have to do all that. Can I take 15 minutes to go hide in my car and just decompress? Yes, you can. And you have to start small, right? Sometimes it's starting with 15 minutes a day. But if you add this in and it becomes a norm for your family, they'll get on board. Like I mentioned, exercise. I do that in the mornings while my kids are getting ready for school. We've normed that. We all share the gym. My husband goes to work out. Then I come in the gym and work out. My kids know this. So we've trained them this way. Mommy's working out. Now, I decided I don't care if my kids come in the room when I'm working out. My husband prefers that nobody bother him when he's working out. So we have a door open, door shut policy, and this is my office gym space. If the door is shut, then the person in the office, like, it's a closed door meeting, like, you don't come in. If the door is open and someone's in here, you're more than welcome to come in. So that is a norm that I've created and a boundary. I've said to my kids, mommy's working out in the morning while I work out in the morning. This is what you're doing, and then, we'll get ready for school together. That makes me feel so empowered because I have something for me. It didn't start that way. So I want to ask you, what are some things and some ways you can start things slowly in your life to make sure you have some self-care? Another thing I want to encourage you to do is this: decide once. I think that in order to beat my decision fatigue, I've made a couple non-negotiables for myself. I'm going to give you some silly examples. When we go out to a restaurant, there's so many decisions, right? If I see a cannoli on that dessert menu, boom, I don't ever need to look at it again. So for me, cannoli, it's a decide once. I see a cannoli, I'm going to buy a cannoli. It's not something I have in my everyday life. I get excited. It's my favorite dessert. I have made these rules for myself of, like, this is a decide once. Okay. I got to the point too, things like baby showers. I don't want to go to them. I don't have any interest in going to them. I don't want to spend 4 hours doing things like that. So my decide once for this is, unless it is, and I have a list of people, like my sister's pregnant right now. Obviously my sister, right? One of my friends who still, isn't a mom yet and might become a mom at some point. I have a very short list of people I would attend. Otherwise, I'm going to send a gift and I'm fine with it. Decide once for yourself. What are the things and the boundaries that you want? So when they come up, there it is. My other decide once is if it's within 24 hours, I will say no. So I break this rule sometimes, but very rarely. So if somebody comes to me with plans and they're like within 24 hours and they really just don't fit, I'm like, cool, no thank you. Thanks for thinking of us, but no. I struggle with some high functioning anxiety, and one of the ways I've learned to cope, I'm not very spontaneous, clearly, but one of the ways I've learned to cope is like creating some predictability in my schedule. So if I have created predictability where I know what's happening tomorrow, and you come to me today and you're like, oh, do you want to go take the kids to the park tomorrow? No. I have zero interest in that. So I've decided that is not something I'm going to do. If it's within the 24 hours, I will break a rule if I feel like it, but normally it's easier for me to keep that boundary. And then honoring your space. When you become more solid and sure of who you are as a person, when people come into your life that are energy vampires, they're dragging you down, it is very easy to notice that. I want you to honor your space. If you feel unaligned, if you feel like someone is kind of crossing boundaries with you, give yourself the permission to say, maybe this isn't the friendship for me, maybe this isn't the person for me, and also just saying maybe this is where our friendship lays. I read a really good book called The Life Council, The 10 Friends Every Woman Needs. And in it talks about the 10 different types of friends that women have. And one of the issues with women is that we try to make every friend this like super deep soul sister, right? Like we want everyone to be like that. And if they're not, then we feel like something's wrong and we try to make it. But what if instead we honored the people and the friendships for who they are and what they are? If that friend is a friend that you guys like maybe don't agree about a couple things. Like I think of a couple people I know on social media and like I don't agree with some things they say on social media or whatever, but my kid really likes their kid and wants to meet up at the park every few months. We're going to meet up at the park. We're going to have a play date. I'm not worried about making them my best friend. I'm watching a supervised play date and that's all it is. And knowing that allows me to honor my space before getting myself in a position to potentially get frustrated or hurt. All right, last set of boundaries let's talk through is work. Out of office, I think is really important. I mentioned that I have some away messages that go up if you email caraharvey.com, right? Cara@caraharvey.com or anybody there. You will get our away message and it gives you links. It gives you places to go. This is really important. I want to share this story. When I was in network marketing, I used to feel so afraid of not answering every message because I was struggling with people-pleasing behaviors. I was so worried about money all the time, right? So I would answer immediately. So I mean, it was detrimental. When I started my own business, I created some boundaries for myself that were, I don't answer my Facebook messages because on my personal page, because there was just so many coming in. When I was in network marketing, it was like heyday of the hey girl messages. Like I would have hundreds a day and it was causing me some stress. So one, I took Facebook Messenger off my phone because I was like, I don't need this constantly. When I log into Facebook for work, if I need it, I have it. One day I had a client who I worked with in network marketing who I hadn't worked with here at Purpose Driven Mom. She wanted to work with me at Purpose Driven Mom. So she Facebook messages me. I'm on my desktop. I see the notification go up. I do not answer Facebook messages for my business, right? So I ignored it because I was in the middle of doing something, whatever. I kid you not even a minute later, I get a DM. I see it come up on my phone from the same person trying to reach me. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. Within 5 minutes, they had found my email, which is my preferred method of communication, had emailed me asking me a question. And I don't blame this person at all. But what I realized was in my business, I had taught people that they can reach me in any way at any point. And if not, come find me. And that's not the way I wanted to live my business. And so we created away messages. And I have lots of my clients who will say to me, thank you. Thank you for modeling this. Thank you for showing that it's okay to have boundaries, right? Make sure you have hours where you're out of office. If you have a traditional job, business. When I was a teacher, the hours were nuts at the school. I was at a charter school. It was a high performance charter school. And the kids would go to school 8 to 5 and every other Saturday. So I was there 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then I also had a phone, a school phone, a cell phone. And I was on call until 9 in case kids needed homework help. Looking back at it now, I'm like, that is bonkers. Like, no wonder I burnt out because I was on demand all the time. Create hours for yourself where you're not thinking or doing work. Keep yourself signed up. I leave my laptop in my office when I leave for the day. At 3 o'clock, I put on my mom hat. I have some transition activities I do, and I pick up my kids. I have learned to compartmentalize my business. Maybe too much. It's funny because I was talking to someone that I know very well in real life, and I mentioned my book, and they're like, you wrote a book? And I was like, right. I compartmentalize. I become Cara. I become mom. I become a Girl Scout. I become that person outside of my work because I have known what it feels like to have my work become my identity, and it's not a great feeling. So create limits, create boundaries, create space for yourself to pause. It is okay to not jump at everyone all the time. It is okay, right? You want to have reasonable ones, like we get back to you within 24 hours. It's nothing unreasonable, but I do not have to be glued to my inbox all the time. And neither do you. Have those conversations that you need. So how do we communicate our boundaries? I'm going to give you a quick tip before we kind of close. So this is Tuckman's model of communication. It's really used for businesses and things like that. I learned this when I was teaching, and it really makes sense about where communication goes wrong. Okay, these are all of the stages of a high-performing team. Forming here, this is like when you're dating, okay? It's new, it's exciting. You ever join like a new company and everything's great and everything's awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how it feels. Everything's great. That stage can last for years. It could last for months. It could last for days. Then you hit this stage. This is the storming stage. This is where we're going to kind of plant today. This is when expectation does not meet reality. And that is where many businesses, many relationships struggle because one of us has an expectation in our head of what we want something to be like, and the other one does not, and it does not click together, and we storm. And when we're storming, we can never get to this place of forming, which is when all things align and our boundaries are created. So I want to just talk to you a little bit about how to communicate boundaries before we end today. Keeping yourself consistent with your boundaries, but giving space to grow is something I mentioned. You have to just be mindful of that, right? I have my limits, but I bend them if needed. I trust myself enough to know that. And I want you to go back to your shoulds. Whenever you catch yourself saying should, ask yourself, whose voice is this? Will saying yes bring me joy or meaning, or will I feel dread when the task comes? And if I'm doing it because I, quote, should be doing it, is that my voice or someone else's voice? So here's a quick formula. Take a screenshot. We've talked about how to make your boundaries. I hope that you make them at the end of this presentation, and then I hope you go and express them to your people. I like to use this when I'm talking with someone and I'm trying to communicate my boundary, right? If a compliment fits, I will give it. Hey, thanks for thinking of me, right? Like say I get approached to do a volunteer thing, right? Thanks for thinking of me, right? Give my answer. And no is a complete sentence, right? Thanks for thinking of me. It's just not aligned with my priorities. No, thank you. Then you say, thanks again. You can encourage them. Hey, I hope you find the right person. If I think of anybody who'd be great for it, I'll let you know. And then you change the subject. Use this over and over and over. It's going to feel like your brain and your body are fighting because it feels so uncomfortable for all us to say no. But I just want to remind you that you can say no. You can say no to your kids. You can say no to your partner. You can say no to a friend. You can say no to anything that does not feel aligned, right? Asterisks within reason. Let's follow all laws and things like that. But you deserved that. You don't have to do what other people want you to do because they ask you to do it. If it comes from a place of your heart and it feels aligned, go for it. I talked about a lot today, but listen, I want to just encourage you today. You don't have to be that stop and drop mom. You don't have to do everything for everyone else all the time if it's not aligned to you. Create boundaries, communicate boundaries, and stick with boundaries. If you want to learn more, come hang out. I'm over on all socials at A Purpose Driven Mom. My podcast is The Purpose Driven Mom Show. You can go get a free workbook and my book at the15minuteformula.com/free. And I want to encourage you to start today. Identify one boundary you'd like to work on, talk it through with your stakeholders and your people, and stick to it. You got this.